So I'm here in my van, sitting on my compost toilet, not using it, but just using it as a chair, overlooking the, wow, beautiful river view. My van's broken down again, but at least it chose a really great place to do it. There's just like, whether it's sadness or anxiety, dread, stress, it's so completely what it is. You know, and then there can be all these stories about like, but there must be something more, right? More than what? More than what? Already, always, there's just full on whatever the fuck is going on. And even to describe what's going on is more word pictures, more word paintings. And that sharing can feel really beautiful. Those word paintings can feel really beautiful to share. I think it's a very human thing. This desire to share. But yeah, it can just feel so obvious that it's like, you know, yeah, is it the pain that kills or is it the wishing the pain away? Is it really the pain that hurts so deeply as the feeling that this pain isn't supposed to be here? That, you know, if I had really nailed it, if I had done this, or if I'd really gotten there, if I were really successful in whatever way, then this pain, whatever the fuck is going on right now, wouldn't be happening. That's the shittiest part, you know? Sometimes it seems like, you know, feeling shitty just happens. It really can just, feeling shitty can totally just happen. And then the feeling that I shouldn't be feeling shitty, that's shitty. That's really shitty. But even if that's what's happening, that's completely what it fucking is. That's completely what it fucking is. So then that leaves nowhere else to get to, because there is nowhere else. There is nowhere else. Really. What is somewhere else? It's this, it's now, it's here as the idea of somewhere else. And there isn't even now or here, because that implies then we're there. So even now and here kind of fall short, but so do all words. Is my mic clipping a little bit? Whatever. You know, honesty hour as a someone in the music and arts field. It can be very common to, you know, encounter opportunities to partake in various substances. And damn, there have been some times I've really gotten down with some mushrooms, with some LSD, with some weed. But like, lately, and even to say lately is painting a picture of time. Lately, it feels like all the interest has just been falling away. Because it's like, I don't know, I can't say this is the same for everyone. And I also can't claim that there haven't been times where those things have been very therapeutic. But it seems like it seems like those things can very easily, at least here, go along with this sense of specialness. Like I'm partaking in this substance, and it's really gonna show me something that I need to see, and it kind of imparts this sense of specialness or like existential, like seeing the true deeper nature or something like that. And it's, I think any perspective shift can at times feel refreshing or like a relief. And there's no sense here of like regretting any of that. But I don't know, it's just like, wow, like just the fucking pavement and the fucking grass and just all of it, you know? It's just like, wow, fucking, it's just full on aliveness all the time already. And there's no kind of like believing that there's a way to like enhance that. It almost just feels like a hamster wheel. Like, oh yeah, but if I were on mushrooms right now, I could really see whatever, you know? There's nothing wrong with any of that. It's just, this is just kind of a description of my experience. Doesn't feel like something I manufactured or doesn't necessarily feel personal because all the opinions and descriptions feel spontaneous. And I guess in the story of Marissa's life for a long time, it really felt like there was an ownership of thoughts and feelings, and like there was some, like another version of me, like a higher self or something like that, that should be doing a better job of managing all this. And like, if I were really there, you know, then I wouldn't feel X, Y, and Z. But that's just suffering. That's suffering, you know? I mean, I think that like there can be pain and there can be any of it, all of it, at any time. But it's never the anxiety itself that seems to feel as painful as the belief that I shouldn't be feeling anxious right now, or that there shouldn't be anxiety right now. It doesn't seem like it's the sadness that is as painful as the belief that this sadness doesn't belong here. Because fuck, imagine like a 1, 2, or 3 flavor existence where it's like, oh yeah, just joy, happiness, bliss all the time. I mean, there isn't that there is no joy without sorrow, and all of these are just words. These are just words that actually depend on each other to have any meaning at all. I mean, there's just feelings, there's just thoughts, and then there's these descriptions of them, and it's like looking at these mountains and these trees, you know, and this water, like, wow, just like fucking wow, dude. And then the words describing them and the sensation of touch and taste and smell and wow, and then, you know, the lines drawn between, you know, mountain and sky and tree and grass, and it's all words, it's all language. It's all everything all the time, and then there's these words that say this is this and that is that, and that's everything all the time too. That's just everything and nothing wording, you know, everything and nothing describing. So how could there be How could there be a journey to find completion when the journey itself is completely journey, and the longing for more is completely longing? It's vibrantly, completely longing. Incomplete is only a comparison, and comparison is a story. There's nothing wrong with it. And there have been times, referencing a past that is really a spontaneous memory that's happening now, and there is no now because there is no not now. But there have been times where I've talked like this and it's been met with, well, kind of like maybe the assumption that this sounds like resignation. I guess all that I'm really wanting to share is just sort of like, that whether or not there's a response to change something or not, or whether or not there's a sense of wanting to get somewhere else or not, that's completely what it is already. So it's not like, I'm not trying to prescribe something. I guess what I'm talking about is sort of the death of any belief that there could be a prescription for life. How could there be a prescription for life when life is already this, just talking, hearing words, conversation, video playing on YouTube or Facebook, sitting on a chair, sitting on a compost toilet in a van. Thoughts about, what am I going to have for lunch? I was talking with my friend Michael today, who suffered a stroke a number of years ago, and he said that, isn't it incredible that, the top part of his vision now isn't really there, but the brain just fills it in a sense that it's not noticed. It's not like there's a solid line between where he's seeing and where he's not seeing, because that's sort of what the brain always seems to be doing, is filling in, the visual space. And then we started talking about how it's what thoughts seem to do. They seem to fill in the gaps of what we don't know, when really there is no knowing. All there is describing. All there is describing, That's all any understanding really is just description. It's maybe description of what we call cause and effect, description of what seems to be happening. That's as far as understanding can really go. So it seems as though thought is always it's always spontaneously, not always, but it can weave all these stories that seem to try and fill in the gaps of the unknown. Like this van's broken down, and it's broken down a number of times. And yesterday, a dear friend in the area allowed me to borrow her car to go to a show to see another friend, and the thought tape played that, hopefully this vehicle doesn't have any issues, because maybe you're cursed, and maybe that's why the van keeps breaking down. And it's so funny how, it doesn't feel like there's really any belief that would uphold the sense of, actually there being someone here who could be cursed, and there being a someone inside this body who's important enough to for the universe to be recognizing me as an individual separate entity who's so important that I would be cursed. But that's the tape that was playing, right? Because I think a lot of times that's what thought seems to do. It's like something inexplicable happens and then, well, it must be because of me. It must have to do with me, you know? Often in a way that implies some specialness or absolute lack of specialness, which is just flip side specialness, right? Like I'm so terribly important or I'm just so terribly unimportant. I'm the least important, which is still special, right? And then, of course, some error messages flashed on my friend's car, and then the tape played again, you know, see, you are cursed, and you just make all the cars break down. And of course, I texted her and I said, hey, have you seen these messages before? And she said, yeah, they come on all the time. And it's just funny how it seems like brains, you know, and this is sort of still describing cause and effect, but it seems as though maybe brains or thought can paint these pictures of why I'm really the cause of everything. And that's sort of a straitjacket, right? Because, I mean, even when people talk about I don't know if anyone's going to watch this, but if they do, I might get some flack for this. Even when people talk about manifestation, you know, I was having a conversation recently with someone, and it was like, you just have to notice all the synchronicities, because then when you notice, then these things start happening, then these things start happening, and it just felt like a bunch of I don't know. It just felt like a bunch of it felt exhausting. It felt exhausting because if it's really believed that I'm in control of my thoughts, and then the better I manage my thoughts, the better the external life outside of me will reflect back to me what I'm wanting. It's both incredibly inflating and also exhausting, I think, because it's like, wow, then sort of everything that ever happens is really my responsibility then. It's like, oh yeah, well, such and such happened. Maybe if I had just been thinking better thoughts, then maybe it would have gone differently. I mean, God, what a fucking burden. I can't claim that I've ever been in control of any thought. And who is the I who's behind the thought? That just feels like another thought. The sense of I should have controlled my thoughts better is just another thought that happened on its own. So there can't possibly be a me in here and a life out there. It's all just fucking life. It's all just fucking life happening. Including the apparent desire to just talk blah, blah, blah about how it's all fucking life happening. I don't fucking know. And this is not a claim that this is the truth, because doesn't really seem like there is such a thing as the truth. Seems like truth is just another word. A word whose definition changes depending on who is asked to define it. And that's been called detachment. That's been called checking out of life. I think I've heard those words before about this type of conversation. But actually, it seems like the checking out of life is the assumption that certain things are fitting in to how it should be, and certain things are not fitting in. That's just counting out. It's so conditional and so exhausting. How could there be a getting it right or getting it wrong? I don't know what that was. How could there be a getting it right or getting it wrong? How could there be a getting somewhere? You know, I was performing on the street yesterday, and this really beautiful couple was really enjoying it. And this woman said, you know, you're going to make it. One day you're really going to make it. And for a second, there was this sense of like extrapolating. What does make it mean? What would that... And then what came out of my mouth was just like, I feel like I already have made it. You know, I do what I love, and I make enough money to eat and have a place to sleep and travel where I want when my van is running. And I can't really imagine anything more than that. I mean, sure, there can be fantasies and ideas about any number of things, but it's like just the fucking ordinary simplicity of just eating a sandwich. That's that shit, man. That's that shit, you know? There is so much fucking time in my life where I was just so fucking after something more, something else. It can't be this. It can't be, I'm not there yet. I'm not what I'm supposed to be yet. There's something that I have to figure out. There's somewhere else that I have to get to. There's something more. More than what, though? More than what? Because even the idea, even the fantasy of more is just a spontaneous thought occurrence that's just full-on fucking vibrant life happening as an idea called something more. And there's absolutely nothing to do with that. There's nowhere to take that and sell it. There's nowhere to... And so all thoughts about wanting what's happening or not wanting what's happening, or here's how I am as a person, or all of these thoughts are just thoughts that happen on their own. And so if there's never been a me at the steering wheel, if there's never been a center to any of this, then this isn't a resignation, because that would assume that I was in control and then now I'm not. But all I'm saying is that there's never been a me to be in control or not in control. It's just been a story. It's just been a set of concepts that's always changing. And then even to say always changing kind of relies on actual time. And I'm not a scientist. I'm not claiming to be any sort of expert, but at least in a felt sense, what is time but spontaneous remembering and spontaneous projecting? So then I could say there's nothing but now. There's nothing but nowness, here-ness. And that includes thoughts about past. You know, when there's a memory, it's not an actual accessing of something concrete. The only realness of the memory is that it's a real memory. It's a real it's a real in the sense that it's really a memory that seems to be happening right now. And the only future is just that there's thoughts right now about the future. And then even to say now again is limiting, because it sort of implies an alternative. But that's why words always fall short, don't they? That's why I think art, you know, can feel difficult, because I think the perfectionism of art is that it's sort of, it feels like this desire to take infinity. There's this bag that's crinkling and it's really annoying me. Come on, Walmart bag. Gotta love plastic. Gotta love plastic. All right. Anyways, super important, whatever I was saying before. Oh, yeah. So, like, I don't know, with artistic expression, it kind of can feel like this, like, wanting to collapse the infinite down into something finite enough to be experienced and shared. And I think that that's what communicating can feel like too, in any shape or form. And so it's never it. It's never it. We can't describe life because the describing is life too. We can't step outside of life to take a snapshot of it because the stepping out and the snapshot are life too. So there's no stepping outside, and there's no capturing, and there's no prescribing, really. People ask me about van life sometimes and say, like, oh, is it so, like, so unexpected, so spontaneous, and, like, you don't know what's next, you don't know, like, how much money you're gonna make all the time and stuff. And it's funny because, like, yes, on paper, van life looks a lot more spontaneous and, like, free-flowing than, like, having an apartment and having a set day job. And I love this lifestyle. I don't know if I could see myself living a different way anytime soon. Even with this van possibly being a lemon. The inside's great though. But it also doesn't really feel that different, because really, like, even the times, you know, where it has felt more stable on paper, it's like, well, management can change, hours can change, you know, income can change, a worldwide pandemic can happen, and then a bunch of work gets canceled, you know, like, no matter what, life is unexpected, and it's spontaneous, and it's free and wild and fucking, and it's none of these things, because these are just fucking, like, just fucking shots in the dark trying to describe the indescribable, really. But there's never a time when an expectation, when a future fantasy, a projection lines up with what actually happens, you know? I can say I'm gonna go on a walk around down the road, across the bridge, over the river, and come back, and in this moment, as I imagine that, there can be very vivid ideas of what that would look, feel, taste, smell like. But then I go on the walk, and inevitably all the little details are infinitely more rich and diverse and unexpected than any mental projection. So it's only ever spontaneity. It's only ever spontaneity. You know? And that's the same for healing and growth and finding ways to make the money that's required to eat food and pay bills. I mean, that's already nature unfolding. That I was never in charge of that. the animals that, as far as we can tell, don't have existential senses of self-consciousness. The mother bird goes and gets the food to bring back to her nest and feed her babies. I mean, there's not a sense of who am I in this world, and where am I going, and what am I really aiming for, and what are my big life goals that are required just for that. That's just life happening. That's just life happening. And it's not to say that any life goals are wrong. I mean, I really fucking want to go back to British Columbia. I want to go to the Netherlands. There's plenty of ideas of what sounds cool, but they're not personal. They're just happening on their own. And then it's just not this heavy lift. Even the sense of something being a heavy lift is just spontaneous, and it's just fully, completely what it is. And the stories of, I really got there and then now I lost it, and if I could just get back and blah, blah, blah. Those are just thoughts that happen on their own too. They're not owned. They're not created. They're just... They're just the wind blowing. They're just the leaves rustling. They're just the river flowing. And those are all just word paintings too. So there is no conclusion. And that's not a conclusion either. How could there be a fucking conclusion? I think when I was a little girl, I really thought that, like, by the time I'm 26, I'm really gonna have a really solid understanding of, like, who I really am and what this shit's really about and what this life stuff's really about, and I'm really gonna have something. But it just almost feels like the opposite. It feels like there's just this dissolving. And even to say dissolving is another story, but it's this felt sense of dissolving and falling away, and it's like these bumper stickers are falling off on the ground, and I'm like picking them up, like, oh, I didn't know that I was carrying that. I didn't know that was back there. All right, it's just this falling away of any conviction that I know anything at all about who I really am, or about how life really is. Because those conceptual bundles are sort of just straitjackets. It's like then everything that happens is either reinforcing or refuting these conceptual bundles. And there's nothing wrong with that. It just doesn't feel so interesting anymore. It doesn't mean that it doesn't still happen. Anything can happen. It seems like a thing that thoughts do to make superstitions and regimens and principles and routines and paths and systems out of everything. I remember being a little girl and it just seemed like the smallest things, like stepping into the kitchen with my right foot first and noticing that I got to the stove a little faster than it's like the brain says, okay, well then I must always step into the kitchen with my right foot if I want to get to the oven in the fastest time. It's just like blah, 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 blah. This happens, and then this must always mean this, and then from now on we can always do this, and then we'll always get this. Just stories. They're just stories. They're just thoughts. They're just thoughts. And there's nothing wrong with it because no one's doing it. They're just fucking thoughts that are just happening. And so in the obviousness that there is only what is apparently happening, and that whatever's apparently happening is just completely what it is, then there's nowhere else to go to look for completion. But in that, the wanting a different job or wanting to visit a different city, or, you know, noticing that a relationship doesn't feel like it's resonating or feeling healthy. I mean, that stuff is all completeness too. So it's not a rejection. It's actually like the end of rejection, but it's also rejection can happen too, because it's not a rejection of rejection. Rejection is completely rejection. So how could there be more than this ordinary, vibrant simplicity of just... Ariana uses the word everyness, just everyness, just like fucking just bang, 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 whatever, man. It's just fucking, it's just this, man. It's just this. It's just this. It's just, and this doesn't mean anything. It's just, full on aliveness. And that includes fear, that includes dread, that includes feeling like there's really someone inside this body who's supposed to be somewhere else by now. It includes all of it. It includes all of it. And that's what I think is meant by unconditional love. When unconditional love is used to describe existence or whatever. This life, you know, this aliveness is unconditional because it's all inclusive. Whatever is happening is included because it's what's happening. And that includes wanting to change it. That includes, you know, I'm not a fan of global warming. I'm not a fan of litter and greenhouse gases. And although all that's happening and it feels like that's complete in that it's completely what it is, there's still a desire here to fucking recycle and compost, and that just feels like a natural response. But it's not, because once something else happens, then we'll really be there. Then I'll really be there. Then this will all really mean something. It's like, wait, like, this doesn't need to mean anything for it to be fully, vibrantly fucking alive, because that's all of it, you know? The rotting, decaying deer carcass on the road that smells absolutely terrible is full on, completely lively, if that's a word. That. And sometimes there's just a fucking shitty mood, apparently, and there's just a feeling of like, whatever the fuck. It's just, but that's completely that too. You know, and is it the shitty mood that sucks, or is it the feeling that I shouldn't be in a shitty mood, you know? That seems to solidify it and like give it life, where it's just like, yeah, sometimes there's just emotional stuff going on that feels less than preferable. And sometimes there's a movement to change it. To go on a walk, or if it works for you, smoke a blunt, whatever the fuck, you know? I sometimes use my little alpha stim device. It clips onto my earlobes, and it sends electrical signals to the brain that kind of help with insomnia and stuff. It's like, yeah, insomnia is completely insomnia, and I also super don't prefer insomnia, so it feels like a natural response to do something about that insomnia. I don't know, but it's all included. It's all fucking included. And there's no one in charge. There's no one in charge. the thought, let me do something about this, is a thought that also happened on its own. Just breathing feels so good sometimes. Just listening to that river. I think it's sandwich time.